button. Okay.
Andrew, do you want to, I'm Lupe, by the way. I work with Ray in admissions.
Hi, Lupe.
I just want to say, like, do you want me to mute us or do you just want to keep the mic on?
Let's keep it on. We'll hear the live reactions.
Okay, sounds good.
One thing to know, Andrew, is like with the audience being far away, you often can't really hear them. So you might get some weird silences when they're actually like cheering and things. So just don't assume it's going to feel like a natural audience.
Okay, fair enough.
Lupe, are we all set?
Yeah. Rabbit is just on his way. Well, we're almost out here.
You're muted, Ray.
You can give us the thumbs up whenever you're ready. Are you going to share your screen at all, Andrew?
Yes, I have quite an extensive presentation, many slides.
I can't wait. Okay, good evening, everyone. It is so nice to see you all. Welcome back. And special shout out to anyone from my expedition who's in the crowd, the Water Babies, or as we like to call ourselves, the Water Babies. It's really good to see you all. I can't wait to catch up about your IST. So this is the third and final speaker in our Inclusive Outdoors speaker series. And our very special guest tonight is Andrew Bernie Bernstein, who I have the pleasure of introducing. His legal name is Andrew Bernstein, but everybody calls him Bernie. I have known Andrew Bernie Bernstein and his family for many years. Both Bernie and his younger brother, Eric, attended my high school in Brooklyn, New York, and both were among the first generations of students to ever attend HMI. Bernie took part in semester 8. Back then we called it RMS 8 or RMS VII in the spring of 2002. While backpacking remained a passion of his in the years that followed, he quickly cemented his one true outdoor love, bike racing. Bernie started bike racing in high school and became very serious about it in college. After college, while embarking on a career as a journalist, he continued racing and reached elite status, competing against professional athletes and Olympians from around the world. In 2016, he finished in the top 10 at elite national championships, behind members of the team going to the Rio Olympics. His bike racing also complemented his careers, first as a cycling journalist and then as a marketer in the cycling and outdoor industries. In 2019, Bernie was finishing up a training ride outside of Boulder, Colorado, when he was hit by a person driving a cargo van. The driver left the scene and Bernie laid on the side of the road for about 40 minutes before being discovered by a passerby. Near death, he underwent 10 surgeries to repair his body and was still left with a spinal cord injury that caused him to be paraplegic. He was hospitalized for 3 months and continues to work on his recovery every day with the goal of continuing an active, healthy lifestyle and includes lots of rides and hikes. In his identity as a person with a physical disability, Bernie engages with the outdoors in a whole new way. He is as passionate as ever about connecting with the natural world, but has faced new obstacles in partaking in outdoor recreation that you will hear about tonight. In the nearly 20 years since he graduated from HMI, Bernie has remained active in the alumni community. He is a founding member of the HMI Alumni Council and has volunteered his time on the council for the past 9 years. We are very lucky that he's spending his evening with us to share his story. Please join me in welcoming Andrew Bernie Bernstein to semester 46.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks for the very, very kind introduction. Ray, or maybe Lupe, can I believe that all the students were given the opportunity to read an essay I wrote for Outside Magazine. Do I have that correct? Maybe. How about this? If you're a student and you read that essay, raise your hand. Okay, like 3 of you did the homework. Okay, we're off to a great start. Like Ray said, my name is Andrew Bernie Bernstein. I was a member of semester 8 in 2002. And I am from Brooklyn, like Ray, and lived on the East Coast for many years and moved to Colorado in 2018, mostly because I wanted to be closer to HMI and be able to get up to Leadville whenever I felt like it. And I live here in Boulder, down in the Front Range. I'm going to be speaking to you tonight a little bit about not so much the injury that caused me to become disabled, but the experience, what my life has been like since, and the process of recovery and getting back to a place where I'm able to be active and participate in outdoor activities. I'm going to share my screen so that you guys can see some photos I'm going to talk through, and I'm going to talk at you for a while, and then we're going to have some time for a Q&A at the end, and I'd be more than happy to answer any question at all, including ones that don't have to do with disabilities. I'm happy to talk about HMI back in my day stuff if you guys are curious. Okay, I'm going to share my screen for a quick sec. Ray, you know what? I don't think I can. Oh, never mind, I can. Okay. Sorry, everybody, bear with me just 1 second. Okay, so here I am with Mr. Ray McGaughey himself. Oops. Oh my God, I'm going the wrong way. Ray was kind enough to visit me while I was in the hospital. And I'm jumping a little bit ahead in the story here, but I wanted to just shout out Ray for being a great guy and for coming to see me when I was at one of the 4 hospitals where I was treated. So Ray, thanks for visiting me. It meant a lot to me at the time. And now that we've established what you guys already know, that Ray is amazing, we can skip ahead. Like Ray mentioned, I was an elite level track cyclist, bike racer, and I did most of my racing on the velodrome, which is sort of a niche type of bike racing. It is an Olympic sport, and I was very privileged to be able to race at a high level. This is a picture of me that was taken July 3rd, 2019 at Elite National Championships in LA. And I got to participate in that race. Unfortunately, it didn't go that well for me, but anytime you have the opportunity to compete, to be one of the best in the nation, it's quite an honor to be there. And then a few weeks after this, as you all know, I got hit by a careless driver or a negligent driver and left with extremely serious injuries. And I've been through a long process of rehabilitation, which is ongoing. I have a left leg that is partially paralyzed. And I'm going to talk to you more about the specifics, but that's kind of the baseline thing that you all should be aware of. This is a picture of me that was taken about a year ago. You can see in this picture I'm using crutches, and there are images coming up where you'll see better, but there's this at the bottom of the screen, you can see my left leg is a brace. And what that brace did was it went under my foot and all the way to the top of my thigh, and it made it so that my ankle and my knee couldn't flex. And what that let me do was put weight through that leg without worrying that it would collapse. But if you can just imagine that you have this thing that weighs 10 pounds strapped to the outside of your leg, and it's made out of plastic and metal, and the only way that you can get around is to kind of like swing that leg and plant it and, you know, put your weight through it. It's, I can tell you, a very inefficient and uncomfortable way to get around. And then of course you have 2 crutches, so you can't use your hands, you can't text while you're walking, you can't carry plates from the kitchen to the dining room table. It's a really challenging way to have to get through the day. And I will say that I'm fortunate to have progressed far beyond this level of assistance, but that time in my life was extremely challenging. Of course, I always wanted to remain active. That was kind of a priority from as soon as I was able to start thinking about my recovery. So, you know, my rigid leg and my crutches and I would go hiking. This is a picture that was taken in December of 2019 in Sedona, Arizona. You know, I would go hiking. I'd make it a mile, you know, at the most, I'd make it a mile, maybe a mile and a half. And then I would just feel so wrecked, because when you walk like that, you're not able to use your hip in the way that your body's designed to work. So you end up using a lot of your trunk muscles, your abdomen and your other core muscles to swing your leg. And then you get, when you only have one leg that's paralyzed, your right leg does much more work than it is proportionally intended to. And that kind of pulls everything on the you know, on the left side of your body towards the right side. And it is extremely painful. But nevertheless, I was, you know, willing to confront that pain, because I wanted to be outdoors so much. This is a throwback picture to me at HMI. This is after my 3rd expedition. I just thought y'all might enjoy seeing that. And I think I have one more. Yeah, this is 1st expedition at Jacob's Chair. I don't know, maybe some of you all went to Jacob's Chair for your 1st expedition. I showed up at HMI with a broken thumb, so I have my arm was in a cast. I think I crashed skiing like 2 days before I was supposed to leave for Leadville. So, you know, my current life is not my first rodeo with disability in the outdoors, but I will say this round has been a little bit more challenging. So this is me after the crash. This is, I think, the day after the crash. You can see that I am unconscious. I have, on my left leg, there's that metal fixture that's called an external fixator. I was so badly hurt that there was no, I wasn't stable enough. My blood pressure was too low for them to do surgery on me safely. So before they could, you know, go in and surgically repair my bones, they did external fixation on several different parts of my body, where they basically stick metal rods through your skin and line up the various bits of broken bone and then fix everything in place and kind of just let it sit. The woman in that image was my fiance. We are actually not together anymore, but you will see her in some videos that I'm going to show you, and you'll hear her voice. And she obviously was very concerned and very caring during this event. Here's some x-rays. This is what my pelvis looks like now. Lots of hardware in there. This is my shoulder. This is my tibia and fibia. And that's my spine. When you break your back, you can break the bones, and sometimes that's all that happens. And then sometimes it is worse than that, and you can end up damaging the spinal cord itself. And I'm sure you all already know, but the spinal cord is what carries signals from your brain down to the rest of your body. And when the cord is damaged, it can leave people either with complete paralysis or partial paralysis. In the grand scheme of spinal cord injuries, I'm very lucky. My injury is low in my back. It's at what we refer to as the L2 level, so lumbar 2, which is kind of like just above the crest of your hip. And the damage to my cord, while very serious, it was not a complete injury. So there's still some signal that gets across the site of the injury, but not everything that you're supposed to get. So I don't have complete feeling in my leg, and I also don't have complete control over all those muscles. And again, if you have questions about what a spinal cord injury is or how it happens, remember them and ask me at the end. What you're seeing in this x-ray is the rods that kind of go up and down with the screws going into my spine introduce a lot of stability, so that you don't have to worry about the part of the spinal cord that's injured becoming more injured. And then some of my vertebrae were so badly damaged in the crash, they actually just removed all the bits of broken bone and replaced it with a cage, which is that kind of rectangular blob that you see sort of on the left side of the image. I was very sad about this, and here I am being sad in the hospital with my teddy bear. I was in a coma for about 10 days, and when I came out of the coma, I had to learn how badly injured I had been and what it meant for me, and it was a lot to wrap my head around. And you can see I also had, in addition to the damage at my lumbar spine, I also had damage to one of the vertebrae in my neck, which is why I have a C-spine collar on in this and a lot of the images you'll see. I had some friends visit me in the hospital. Sometimes they made me feel better. Sometimes they kissed me. These are some other friends who visited me. This is on the right is Leah Ingelstead, and the center is Joy Shirt. I'm just showing you guys this because Joy and Leah are also HMI graduates who live in Boulder. Leah went to semester 14 and Joy went to semester 16. And I met them when I moved here at HMI Day. So just shout out to the HMI alumni community. This guy is Tim Glatch. Tim found me on the side of the road after about 40 minutes, and he called an ambulance and waited with me, and the ambulance took me away. And Tim was able to track me down when there were some news stories about the crash. And I always include Tim when I'm talking about my injury, because without him, I would have died for sure. And he was paying attention to where he was driving, and he saw a damaged bicycle with no rider, and he said, well, that's not right. And he circled around and he got out of his car, and he found me kind of in a ditch where I'd been thrown. And I wasn't completely unconscious, but I was very, very out of it. And he was able to call an ambulance and to just stay with me until help arrived. And Tim is a cyclist himself, and he'd actually been hit by a driver only about 2 months before this, and he had not quite as bad an injury as mine, but a very serious injury. It just goes to show that when you all are driving, many of you probably already do, be careful and pay attention, and definitely don't look at your phone. Here I am starting the rehabilitation process. The first thing was just to learn to stand up, which, if you all want to stand up, you might like push through your quads. Maybe if you're sitting in a low seat, you'd push against your knees. I had to learn to do everything with just my right leg, because my left leg initially was too weak to contribute anything. And by the way, I'd been in the hospital when this picture was taken for about 2 months. And there was no haircut the whole time. Here I am a little bit further down the rehabilitation process, still no haircut, but someone gave me a hat finally. I was hospitalized at 3 different places. This image was taken at the 3rd of those hospitals, which is a place that specializes in spinal cord rehabilitation. That's where Ray visited me. And the work there a lot of it was specific to my spinal cord injury, but a lot of it also was just sort of general conditioning, because I lost 30 pounds while I was hospitalized. And, I arrived at Craig without all that weight, and they needed to help me gain strength and get some of that weight back, and just sort of get back to a healthy lifestyle. That's my cat Metal. I just always like to include him. Here I am still at Craig Hospital learning to walk. So you all know, you just got back from your expedition, that walking is the essential way that most people interact with the outdoors. We go on hikes, we go trail running, we go backpacking, we go skiing. So for me, the first thing was just to be able to, walk around for what we call activities of daily living. And I was hospitalized in, a floor of the hospital, and there was sort of a hallway that was oval in shape. And, towards the end of my stay, I was like given permission to start walking on my own without a physical therapist. And here I am, I made it 5 laps around the hospital, which is a distance of probably 100 yards. And it was exhausting, and I was so happy to have been able to walk that far. So I'm, celebrating the success. Here's what it looks like to walk with that brace that I was using.
You're doing a great job.
Just punch it along. The sidewalk.
So you can see that I have to move my whole leg as one unit. There's no flexing the knee. And, you know, when you're healthy and you take a step, you kind of point your toe down a little bit to meet the ground. I wasn't able to do that. And it was extremely slow. You know, this video was in October 2019, so about 3 months after my crash, and I couldn't walk fast enough to safely cross the street. So it was scary to be out in the world. And you know, you suddenly start to notice cracks in the sidewalk much more closely, or, you know, small sills and doorways. You start to pay attention to these kinds of things that you ordinarily wouldn't have to. This is the first hike I did. This was about a week after that first video. This is up in Rocky Mountain National Park, which is in Estes Park, Colorado. The guy in the park is my uncle. He was visiting from Washington, D.C. We found this trail in the park that was pretty much flat. It was gravel and so relatively smooth. And we brought my wheelchair because we weren't sure how far I'd be able to walk before I had to get back into the chair and push myself back to the car. I ended up walking about a half a mile, and I never had to use the wheelchair. The white thing that's around my waist is called a gait belt. And patients with serious injuries will often wear those in physical therapy so that there's something solid that a therapist or someone else can grab onto in case you start to fall. And I would wear that all the time, anytime I was walking, so that, you know, whoever was with me could keep me from, like, you know, falling over, which is a real concern when you are first learning to relearning to walk. I was so proud this day not to have to get into that wheelchair. Another HMI alum. This woman's name is Carly Ecker. Oh my God, she changed her name because she's married now. Carly was in my semester, in semester 8, and she lives in Fort Collins, Colorado. Carly Ackerman. And I threw myself a 35th birthday party because I was so happy to be alive and able to celebrate a birthday. And Carly came down from Fort Collins to help me celebrate. So again, remain close with your semester mates. Okay, here's another hike we did in Arizona. When you all come to a stream that you need to cross, you might think about it for a couple seconds, you plot your route, and then you go. You're gonna see it's a lot more complicated when you have one paralyzed leg. Another thing is, I don't know where my foot is in space, so I'm always staring at my feet to make sure I'm, like, putting it in the right spot. And that's what's happening here.
Nice.
So this is about 4 months after my injury. You know, think about those rocks might move a little bit.
Good job. Good choice. Nice. Woohoo!
So you can imagine, you know, not only am I scared of falling over to the creek, but I also don't want to get my foot wet, because if I get my foot wet, I won't necessarily know if it's too wet or too cold. You know, you don't want to get blisters. You don't want your skin to become damaged. So it may not look like a big deal. It may not look like much of a creek at all. But when you have paraplegia, it's suddenly even a small creek becomes a major, major hurdle. Oops, sorry. So I, of course, also wanted to get back on my bike. And at first I started riding indoors on a stationary bike, and I'd be able to get out of my, you can see my wheelchairs in the lower right-hand corner of the image. And I'd be able to, like, kind of get myself onto the bike, and I'd strap my foot into the pedal, my left foot. And I could kind of ride. It wasn't very satisfying, but I was able to do it. And that, you know, became more and more a part of my recovery as time went on. And you can see, like, there's a healthy right leg and then a left leg that was just completely atrophied because it's paralyzed. But fortunately on a bike, even with one leg, you can kind of turn the pedals over and the momentum will carry the other leg through. Here's another hiking video. This is where I live in Boulder. And this, as I got a little stronger, I unlocked the knee joint of that brace, and I was able to use my quad strength to keep my knee from buckling. And this was kind of the progression that they mapped out for me. But I still kept wearing the big brace to protect my knee, to keep my knee from hyperextending.
Whoa.
So what Gloria was so excited about was that I stepped up onto those little steps, and I was able to actually use my quad to, like, lift the rest of my body. And that was kind of, this was the first sign that I was, like, maybe going to be able to actually go hiking someday. It was the fact that I was able to use my knee and extend my knee, and that my quad was getting stronger. Sometimes you fall over. And, you know, it's not always the worst thing in the world.
What just happened to you?
I just fell.
What did you tell me to do right after?
Take a picture.
So when you're recovering from an injury like this, sometimes you fall, and it's important to, you know, keep it in perspective. And here's yeah. Oops, sorry, wrong video.
Back on my feet. Learning to walk ain't easy, folks.
You're fine.
The thing is to get up.
He's fine, fortunately.
I am fine. Little scrapes.
Nothing, no blood.
A little bit of blood. Just a little bit of blood.
She just needs a bit of blood.
Back on my feet.
So I stand by that advice. No matter what, the important thing is to get back up. And I did also get back on my bike. About a year after my injury, I was able to start riding again. I had and still have a lot of fancy bikes in my life, but this was the bike I wanted to ride first because it's very easy to put your foot on the ground while you're sitting on the saddle. This picture was actually taken very close to where you all are, just outside of Copper. There's a beautiful bike path that goes from Copper down to Lake Dillon. And that was one of the first places I rode. So on the left is the brace that I started out with. And you can see it goes underneath my foot and it goes all the way up to the top of my thigh. And then there's this knee joint, which at first I would use it locked. And then as you saw, I started to unlock it. And on the right side is what I use now. It's two pieces. It's what we call an AFO, so an ankle foot orthotic. So it still goes under my foot and it comes up to the back of my calf. And it's made out of a flexible material so that there's a little bit of ankle motion that can happen. And it kind of helps. My calf muscle is totally non-functional, so it helps kind of do what your calf might do by pushing your knee forward a little bit. And then the upper part, the knee brace, prevents me from hyperextending my knee. And in the center is me wearing my brace underneath a pair of jeans. And I was so happy to be able to, you know, put on my jeans over this brace and kind of look like a normal guy. It was something that, you know, they told me would happen eventually, but I didn't really believe them. And I thought I was going to have this big clunky thing that I was going to have to wear over my pants forever. And, you know, getting this new brace and going home and putting on my pants, and not just my pants, but also with the big brace, I had to wear two different size shoes. I had one size 11 and one size 13. And I got rid of most of my shoes because I was like, well, I'm going to have two different size shoes forever. But I kept my favorite red Adidas, and they told me that they would fit over my my new brace. And I didn't really believe them, but sure enough, they did fit over. And so, you know, I put on my jeans and my red shoes, and I was so excited. So I immediately took a mirror selfie, as you do. And this is what it looks like when I walk with the new setup. And you're going to notice that I progressed. This video is from about October, and I was able to get to the point where I didn't need my crutches anymore. I did use trekking poles sometimes, and then I, for a short time, used a cane, but I pretty quickly got to the point where I no longer needed either. This video was taken by one of my physical therapists.
Do both directions.
So you can see I'm confidently stepping
Okay,
through,
turn around.
and I'm able to support myself with my left leg. And I'm also wearing a mask because, you know, COVID. And this is what it looks like when I go hiking now. I use trekking poles when I go hiking. They help a lot, especially going downhill for balance. And, you know, on uneven terrain, it's always nice to just have a little bit of security of extra points of contact with the ground. You'll notice I'm proudly wearing an HMI Patagonia because I always have HMI pride. But I love that, you know, at least, especially when it's cool enough to wear pants, I can fit, like I was telling you, I can fit the whole setup underneath my pants. And I, aside from my limp, I look kind of like a normal person. This is my other cat because, you know, she's important. And let's see, I even was able to go snowshoeing this winter. I was a little bit anxious about what that would be like, but it turned out to be easier than I thought. And the whole brace setup fits underneath my winter pants very easily. And it was great exercise to be able to, like, pick up the snowshoe high enough to clear the snow. Being able to do activities like that is extremely important to me. I think my girlfriend and I hiked about 3 miles that day, and it was really hard. But it felt like such an accomplishment to be out there in, wintry, blizzardy, windy conditions and feel fairly confident that I was going to be okay. I was going to be able to finish the hike and get back to the car safely. And it kind of starts to give you the confidence to think about what you might be able to do in the future. Of course, sometimes you fall down. And, as I said before, nothing in life comes easy, and there's always going to be some risk. And, I know you all have learned a lot about assessing and managing risk. And in this case, I felt that, like, even though it was likely I probably was going to fall over a bunch on my first snowshoe trip, it was worth trying. And it absolutely was. And, I was able to get myself up and continue that hike. This picture was taken in February. The guy on the left his name is Mason. He's about your age. He crashed while snowboarding in January, and he ended up with a spinal cord injury, kind of similar to mine. His is a little bit higher and involves both of his legs. And he was actually hospitalized at the same hospital that I went to. So I was really glad to have the opportunity to go down and visit him and kind of just talk to him about, like, what the future holds for him, and that he's got great chances at rehabilitation and getting back to things he loves, including snowboarding, hopefully, and just to show him, like, what a recovery can look like. Because when you're first in that wheelchair, the first couple months, it's hard to imagine that your life is going to be anything similar, as anything close to what it was before. And even for someone who is never able to walk again, that there are ways you can enjoy the outdoors. There are ways you can have deep and meaningful relationships with all kinds of people. And I'm still relatively new to this injury, and I'm still learning lots and lots about it and what it's like to have it. And I'm also still improving, and I don't know what the endpoint will be for me. And I'm so grateful to meet Mason and people like him and have the opportunity to say, like, listen, like, you don't know where this is going, and you don't know where it's going to end up. And the important thing is just to focus on working hard and thinking about what's next, and trying to get as good as you can get, while also taking care of the rest of your life. And this, parting shot, this is where I live. This is just outside my house here in Boulder, looking into the Flatirons. I am very, very lucky to have been able to have returned to a lot of these activities. There's lots of people who have spinal cord injuries and other types of disabilities who are bound to a wheelchair and find different ways to enjoy the wilderness, whether that's riding a hand cycle, a mountain bike hand cycle, or finding trails like the one that I went to in Rocky Mountain National Park that you can navigate on a wheelchair. And a lot of my disabled friends are big into sit skiing, and that can be sit Nordic skiing or sit downhill skiing. And it's these injuries are all very unique and very different. We all go on different journeys. I feel, as I said, extremely lucky that I'm able to still connect to the outdoors. In fact, reconnect to the outdoors. I'd gotten really kind of far away from hiking because I was so focused on bike racing, and now I'm really finding that I'm actually enjoying hiking much more because it's new to me, and I can go places I haven't been, and I live in a place where there's amazing trails right out my back door, or my front door, actually. And cycling, on the other hand, is a little bit harder because it's not anywhere close to what I remember it being. And so, I've been through a little bit of a transformation in that regard. I know that I will always be a cyclist and will always love to do it, but I also know that it's not the thing that I feel most driven and drawn to right now. And I'm so glad to be able to get out and go hiking. Okay, with that, I'd love to hear some of your questions. Well, don't all speak at once.
Hi, I'm Brooke. And I was just curious, at this point, what's kind of the trajectory of your recovery, and how has that evolved and changed over time in the past couple of years.
Yeah. Did you say your name is Brooke?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks for the question, Brooke.
Of course.
So one of the things about spinal cord injuries is there's no sort of set path. Every injury is very unique. And we don't know, essentially. Basically, we all have the opportunity to continue our recovery for as long as we can. And then at some point, you maybe stop recovering. You stop getting increased sensation in parts of your body that don't have sensation, or you muscles are no longer able to become to gain strength. And I don't know when that's going to be. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to continue my recovery. I don't have any kind of a timeline. And I also don't have a lot of examples because everybody else and their injury is different from me and my injury. So I can't meet someone who's 10 years out from their spinal cord injury and say like, oh, I'm going to end up like that guy. Because I don't know. I could, or it could be that like that guy's injury was not as severe as mine and he's had a better recovery, or he's had a much more severe injury and he is in a power chair and he's quadriplegic. So what I have decided is that I'm going to continue to work as hard as I can on my recovery until I stop seeing things coming back, until I stop gaining strength, until I stop getting sensation back in the parts of my leg that don't have sensation. And, again, I don't know when that's going to be. And even when I get to that point, I anticipate that there will be a lot of work for the rest of my life in maintaining the strength that I have, because it's hard to exercise. It's hard to get out and do things. And then, the muscles that are weakened require more work to maintain their strength. So I have had a lot of help with this recovery. Since I got out of the hospital, I have worked with 3 different physical therapists and then 2 different trainers. I see all 5 of those people once or twice a week. I go to physical therapy every day, usually before work, and then sometimes again in the evening. And I do a lot of exercising on my own. I actually currently at this very moment, I'm dealing with a stress fracture that I got because I was out walking and couldn't feel that my ankle was maybe getting a lot of pressure on it. And I kept walking and I kept walking. And then the next day I noticed my ankle was super swollen. And, I went to the doctor and turns out that I had damaged the bone in my ankle. So I haven't been able to be outdoors as much as I would really like to be right now. Hopefully it won't be too much longer before I get cleared for hiking. But, that's kind of what it looks like for me, is a lot of work for now, and probably a lot of work for quite a while. Who's next?
Hi, my name's Grant. I was wondering, so it seems to me like you've already made a pretty phenomenal recovery. I was just wondering if that was expected from the beginning, if that was more through like hard work and dedication that you had, or yeah.
That's a great question. Thanks, Grant. I have had a good recovery. And in part because I've been very dedicated to working really hard. And also in part because just of the nature of my injury, my cord is damaged, but it wasn't as badly damaged as it could have been, or as other friends of mine's cords have been. So you asked, is it as was expected? And I think that's a really difficult question to answer, because with an injury like this, no one is willing to give you any kind of firm prognosis. They will say like, you got to kind of see how it, take it one step at a time, basically, is what the doctors and physical therapists will tell you. And then you kind of set process goals. So for me, the first process goal was like being able to walk and not having to rely on a wheelchair. And then after that, the next process goal was being able to unlock that knee joint and being able to use my knee and have enough strength in my upper leg to not have to worry about my knee buckling. And then the next process goal was to get into a lighter weight brace. So is it as expected? It's, that's a really, really hard question to answer, but I can say that I've worked for everything that I've gotten, and I am proud of the recovery that I've had. And also I hope that it continues. I hope that in another 6 months or another year, I maybe start to recover some of the muscles below my knee, which currently are completely paralyzed. There's no guarantee of that. That's my hope. And unfortunately, there's no medical treatment for spinal cord injury. There's no medication. There's no surgical procedure that can repair the cord itself. There is actually some interesting research into devices that can transmit neurological signal from the brain to the muscles themselves and kind of jump over damage in the spinal cord. But that's a long way away from being available for use. And it's first going to be available for people with quadriplegia who don't have use of their arms. So, I'm not holding my breath. I'm focused much more on what I can control, which is basically just improving my gait, using the bracing that I have to the best effect that I can use it, and then strengthening the muscles that are already working. What other questions do you all have?
Hi, my name is Anna. I was just wondering how this affected like other aspects of your life and how you overcame that.
Thanks, Anna. Well, this kind of injury has affected every aspect of my life. I was extremely fortunate that my employer, they got a call on a Saturday on a Sunday morning, actually, that was said like, hey, just so you know, Andrew's going to be out of work for a while. And they kept me on the books. They kept paying me for the entire time I was hospitalized, and they never put any pressure on me to come back to work before I was ready. They just said, there's a spot for you here when you are ready. And when I did finally return to work, they allowed me to start part-time so that I could be, I basically took, after 3 months of medical leave, I took another 9 months to figure out how to integrate physical therapy into my daily life and work life. And that's kind of been probably the hardest challenge, is kind of juggling and scheduling and making sure that I'm like getting all of my many medical needs taken care of while also doing a good job at work, and grocery shopping and trying to clean my apartment, and making sure the oil gets changed in the car and all that, because you can't stop living the rest of your life. As I told you all, I was engaged, and that relationship I think was already troubled before my injury, and it took us a while to like come to terms with the fact that like the relationship needed to end, and it was okay for it to end, even though I had experienced this life-changing injury. And then I was really scared to date again, because I didn't know what it was going to be like to have to tell someone that that I'm partially paralyzed, and I'm very limited, and I can't go skiing, and I'm getting better at hiking, but I'm pretty slow, and my activities are restricted. And I am fortunate to have found that people were more receptive than I thought they would be, and now I've met someone who's a much better match for me. So you have to confront all of the fears, I guess, whether that's going snowshoeing or dating or returning to work after a long absence. Anyone else have any questions? Yes.
Hi, my name's Tyler, and I was wondering, what's a favorite memory from your time at HMI?
Thanks for the question, Tyler. Yeah, and before I answer your question, I realized I showed you a picture of Ray visiting me in the hospital, and I totally forgot to mention that Danny also visited me in the hospital, and I was so glad to see him. Unfortunately, we didn't take a picture, but Danny's a great guy, and I'm so glad that he's a friend, and it makes me grateful to have maintained my connection with HMI through all these years, and maintain connections to people like Danny, who are so important to me. I have a lot of memories from my time at HMI, of course, but I think that probably one of my favorites was just probably the winter expedition, digging a Quincy and sleeping in it. And, that for me, that was the first time that I'd really been exposed to backcountry skiing, and this idea that you could just, pick a hill and decide if it was safe, and then if it was, go ski it. And I had done some winter camping before that, but not for that many, not nearly that many nights. And I just love that whole experience of being out in the snow, but like learning how to be comfortable and learning how to stay warm and dryish and kind of mastering those really hard conditions. And after HMI continued, I went winter camping with a friend of mine, well, with a few different friends of mine, but one in particular. We went at least once a year, every winter, for years, until he moved to California just a few years ago. And I was just I always loved just like keeping up those skills, and also anytime we'd go winter camping, thinking about learning to do everything that we now did when I was a student at HMI.
Hi, I'm Tate. In a kind of similar vein, how has your experience at HMI like shaped and influenced your life?
Thanks for the question, Tate. Well, in a lot of ways, I think I came to HMI because, I grew up in Brooklyn near where Ray grew up. And I always felt a little bit out of place. And I really wanted my parents to let me go to a boarding school, and they wouldn't. And then we found HMI, and, HMI was pretty new when I first heard about it. It was only their third year when I applied. And it was, it was a good compromise. It was like, I wasn't going away to boarding school forever, but I got to, go live in rural Colorado for a semester and have all these amazing experiences. And I think for me, it kind of validated the idea that like life could be different than what life in New York City looked like. And indeed, I graduated high school in 2003 and left to go to college in upstate New York. And I never came back to New York City, really. A couple of months here and there during college, but I really found that I loved living in places that were closer to nature, where access to getting away from civilization was much easier. And so, yeah, I think HMI like kind of gave me the confidence that the things I wanted in life were out there, and they were in fact not that hard to find. So I think that's probably the single biggest influence. The outdoor skills I use and used and continue to use, and I'm very grateful to have them, but I think that probably isn't the biggest impact that the school has had on me. It's more the validation that like life can be different from what it is, and you also that like you can probably find what you imagine you want, and then see if you like it. And the community, I think the community has been really important. Like Ray told you, I've been on the alumni council since we started it in 2012, and I love being that deeply engaged with the alumni community, and having a reason to stay in touch with what's going on at the school. And in non-COVID years, we actually would have a meeting in May on campus, and we would get to meet all of you in person. I can't wait for our meetings to return. And to me, the school did so much for me as far as helping me figure out who I am and want to be, that I'm grateful to volunteer my time to give back to them now. Ooh, two simultaneous questions.
Hi, I'm Kayla, and I'm wondering what's the first thing you remember after the accident?
Thanks, Kayla. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna just pick on Kayla for just a quick second. I'm sorry, Kayla, but I don't like to think of it as an accident, because it was a crime that was committed against me. And while I definitely don't think of myself as a victim, I do think of myself as a crime survivor. And the accident implies that term implies that like nothing could be helped and nothing was done wrong, and that's not the case. Someone assaulted me with their vehicle and then drove away, which is a crime. So I prefer the term crash. So Kayla, I hope you don't mind that I took the opportunity to point that out, but all the same, thank you for your question. The first thing I remember after the crash was I have a very, very vague memory of coming to on the ground and understanding that I was really hurt, but not not really comprehending everything that was wrong. And I remember thinking like, okay, well, I better call 911. But when you're a bike rider, a lot of us wear jerseys with pockets on the back, and my phone would have been in one of my pockets on my back. And I broke my left shoulder and also my right collarbone. So in my memory, I couldn't find my phone, but in reality, I probably couldn't get my hand behind me to get into my pocket. And I had so many broken bones, 35 broken bones, and everything hurt. So I remember thinking like, well, okay, I guess I can't find my phone. I'm going to have to signal a car somehow. And that's my last memory. I remember just the thought I have to signal a car. And I don't remember actually signaling a car, but I did do it because what Tim told me was that he was driving down the road and he thought he saw a face. And he was like, was that a face that I just saw? And so he thought maybe it was maybe a homeless person who needed to lift a boulder or something, but he thought like, I better check this out. So he turned his car around and drove past and didn't see anything on the second pass. And then he turned around again just to be absolutely certain. And on the third pass, he spotted my helmet, which I guess had come off me somehow. And what Tim thinks, and I don't remember this again, but like what Tim thinks is that I heard a car approaching and I kind of lifted myself up a little bit and then laid myself back down. And because of that, he was able to see my face for just a split second. And that's what it took. That was the difference between life and death for me. And then after that, I don't have any memories for 10 days. And then I start to have some very, very fuzzy memories of being in the hospital and being in a lot of pain and not really understanding why. And, I was on all kinds of crazy drugs and I was having hallucinations and what they call ICU delirium, which is when you're on a lot of crazy drugs in the ICU. And they're, in addition to the drugs, they're waking you up all the time. So I have a lot of memories that are, they're probably not real. And they're like things that I experienced that I think were real to me at the time that were probably just like elements of reality combined with what I was imagining was going on. And then as time went on and they started to be able to take me off of the pain medication, I started to get a little more with it. And I have memories about conversations I had with nurses and conversations I had with my family. And, I remember, I had two very close friends who they were already planning to visit, and, they arrived for their, vacation about 2 weeks after my accident, and I was in the ICU, and they came and visited. And it's a couple with a little daughter, and there's pictures of us together in the hospital. My only memory of their time with me was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go so that Kate can come visit, and I'm gonna watch Millie, our daughter. And then the other mom would say like, okay, I'm gonna leave so that Lydia can come back and visit. And in my mind, their entire visit was just the two of them juggling their daughter, which probably was what their visit was. But I just have this memory of them saying like, okay, I'm leaving so that my wife can come. Okay, what other questions do you guys have? Okay.
Oops. Hey, Andrew.
Hey, Ray.
My webcam's kind of messed up here. One sec. So my question for you.
Oh, what about the student who just approached the camera?
Okay, sorry.
Let's let her go first, Ray.
Hi, I'm Aloe. I just wanted to ask, what's your favorite X-Men memory? That's it.
Okay, well, so thanks for the question. I think, I already told you how much I love the winter expedition, but I like I told you guys, I showed up at HMI with a broken thumb, which was super inconvenient because I had a cast that went, all the way up to my bicep. And also I had like a permanent thumbs up. So I knew that it was going to be cold in Leadville, and it was going to be cold on the expedition. So, in the one day between me breaking my thumb and having to leave for HMI, I went to an outdoor store in New York City and like found a pair of mittens that I could like get on over my like permanent thumbs up. And I just remember like my my tart mates having to like help me like kind of like jimmy the thumb of this mitten onto my permanent thumb up, and it was I was grateful for their help. Frankly, I was grateful that HMI let me go on the first expedition. I was concerned that they wouldn't, but the head of the schools at the time were Molly and Christopher Barnes, and I convinced them that that I could do it, and I'm glad that I did, because I would definitely not have wanted to miss out on the first trip to Utah. Ray, do you want to ask your question now?
Yes, yes. Sorry, Elo, that I cut you off. My question is, can you give us some advice, Bernie, about ways to not commit microaggressions, or let's call them like macroaggressions, against people with disabilities? Like, do you have any advice on terminology to use, or like things that we should or shouldn't avoid saying, or like ways that you could be offensive sometimes without even realizing it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Ray. I will say the number one thing, and I know we talked a little bit about safe driving, but the number one thing, if you are not disabled, don't park in a handicapped spot. Like, I don't care if it's for 5 minutes and you're running to the store. Like, if you do that, that is a macro aggression. That is a big, big aggression. Please don't do that. The second thing, you know, and I think this is true, not just the disabled community, but I think this is true of all kinds of minority and marginalized groups, is don't make assumptions. You know, there's a really wonderful book that I read recently called Sitting Pretty, which is written by a woman who became paraplegic as a 3-year-old, and so she's just, you know, been paraplegic basically her whole life. And you know, she talks a lot about people assuming that because she's in a wheelchair, she needs help with a door, or she needs help getting into her car, or she needs help carrying groceries. And the reality is that, like, she doesn't. She can do all that on her own because she's been in a wheelchair her entire life, and you don't get to be, you know, a middle-aged person without having learned to open a door. So, you know, that said, like, if you're going into a store or something and you see someone coming up behind you in a wheelchair, I don't think it's rude to offer to hold the door. But if someone says, I got it, they got it, you know, move on. And, you know, the other, like, kind of the microaggression, I would say, is like assuming that, like, we want to be encouraged for, you know, very small acts of daily life. You know, I have a close friend who is in a wheelchair permanently, and he, you know, anytime somebody says something to him like, hey, like, good job, man, or like, you're doing great, like, he texts me immediately and is like, oh, I got another one. He hates that because he's just doing his life, and he doesn't need to be reminded that his life is now different from what it used to be and from what most people's are. You know, there's other things that are probably a little bit obvious to you all, like, don't stare. The thing that bothers me the most is when people make an assumption that I have an ACL injury. And, you know, it happens to me every time I go hiking. Someone sees me limping and they see my trekking poles and they like look me up and down, they go, ACL, huh? And, you know, depending on my mood, I have different strategies for dealing with it. But I don't like that. I don't like having to explain to people what my injury is, because frankly, it's nobody's business unless I choose to tell them. And also, like, you know, if you ask somebody what their injury is, you are assuming that they want to talk about it. And they're assuming, and you are assuming rather that, like, you have a right to know. And frankly, you don't. You know, I think if you are in a conversation with someone and they give you an opening to ask you questions, like, that's fine. And I would encourage you to be open in response. But I don't think you should go up to anybody with any kind of a disability or any kind of a difference from you and just ask them questions without being invited to do so. There are many more, but those are top of mind for me. And I know that I think we're scheduled to end now, but if anyone has any last questions, I'd be happy to continue talking for another couple of minutes. Or we can call that a great hour together. Okay. Thank you, everybody. It was really great to spend the time with you. I'm glad to meet you and enjoy the rest of your semester. I hope to meet you as alumni soon.
Thank you so much, Bernie. Thank you.